it's Tacky Talk time. We haven't chatted with State Representative Tacky Chan for a little while. How are you, Tacky?
Hey, good to see you, Joe. It's been about almost 2 weeks, I think, since we last got together in the dog days of August, and survived yet another birthday somehow.
Happy belated. Another milestone.
Regretfully, yes, I've hit a milestone.
Was there, a big party and streamers and fireworks?
No, I like my low key life, and I've moved past big parties these days. Although my brother has been charged by my mother to yeah, my mom's assigned my brother to put together some kind of get together. It's not going to be a big one, but yeah, I've the nature of this lifestyle. You're always out there seeing people, and and even though COVID's changed how we do big events, it does get exhausting after a while, and some time away, and small groups works well for me in terms of socializing. I like to be in relatively small numbers. I don't like to be in a room of 50 if I can avoid it. But I mean, I do have friends, and there's a lot of them, and they all want well wishes, and which is great. But I think people forget. I mean, some of us are not super extroverts who just need to be around 200 people at a time grabbing attention. Those
Well,
you
I hope you at least had a piece of cake.
I'm gonna have to probably make my own. My dietary limitations make it relatively challenging for me to enjoy
Oh, right.
certain comforts in life. On the flip side, it does keep my waistline down.
Well, happy belated birthday nonetheless.
No, thank you very much, Joe.
Since we last talked, there was a huge August Moon Festival in Quincy.
Yes, I was at the August Moon Festival this Sunday with my team at the table, and you can see some of the pictures of us on social media. I passed about 3,300 Tacky Chan fans, which has now become a mainstay of every August Moon, and about 500 so orbiters, and also passed us some ice pops. So wonderful weather. Couldn't ask for better weather for August. Not too humid, not too dry, bright sun, but not stifling sun. So it was hot, but it was bearable. And you can see I got a bit more color out of one day. Uh, my August moon tan, I guess is what
But you're right. I mean, with the way these weekends have been going, it was sketchy right up to the last minute, but it was just picture perfect.
Yeah, I've been affiliated with this event in one form or another for well past 25 years. And there's only been one time it was canceled. Actually, I wasn't in country that year because it was a tropical storm came through. The issue wasn't the rain. Concern issue is the wind.
Mm.
Once winds close in at 15 miles per hour, your tents don't stay down.
Yeah.
So, that year, I think it was 2003, because I remember it was in Hong Kong. It was one of those odd summer trips I did because of grandma's birthday. She was turning 80, so she demanded a big party in 2003, and we all had it. We all had to go. It was not optional. Yes, that's put it.
When grandma speaks, people listen. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So you know, we, that was the year I wasn't in attendance. That was a Cayman Marketplace, if I remember correctly, in '03.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We were sitting in, the Saturday before, the day or Friday before, trying to figure out, what the weather projection was and whether we take a risk. Other times we've missed rain. I mean, I set up tents my younger days, the day after it rained, and, evaporated by 10 a.m. It was just so hot.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the 36th annual this year, I think. So that's quite a record.
Yeah, it started on a little history. The Walls and Luther Church parking lot. They're the ones who opened this thing up. And then it went to North Quincy High with Bay State Community Services, Impact Quincy. And then, I took it over with Quincy Asian Resource. Quincy, it was that time with the Quincy Asian American Association, the QAAA. And we migrated from North Quincy High to Billings Road. And then from there, we popped over to North Quincy MBTA lot. Then we we've had a couple of quick stints at Bishop Fields when we tried to do this in September. That wasn't a great idea. Then we bounced back to the MBTA lot in North Quincy
Yeah.
and found out ways to came in Marketplace, then to Quincy Center, take over Hancock Street, and then bounce from there to the current location in front of Cottington at the high school, and which is probably the best locale of this scale event.
Yeah, I think so. It's most conducive to being able to just kind of cordon it off, and just have it safe and plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah, the logistics work best because it's been cornered off before for Flag Day.
Mhm.
So traffic reconfiguration is not novel. People have dealt with this before. The sufficient parking, the geographic zone, you can park in closer to downtown and walk over, which is only like 10 minutes. And you have MBTA ability, MBTA obviously, despite the MBTA, you do have bus and train access. And live in the Marymount area or even Quincy Center area, it's still a walkable type of
Mhm.
event. And you got the Quincy High parking, you got parking at YMCA, and try to minimize impact on the neighbors as best possible. And of course, great job with the city. I mean, you need the Parks Department, you need the Quincy DPW, you need Brewster Ambulance Service, you need Quincy Police Department, all on hand. We never had a major incidents. We had another. It looks like we had another person get heat stroke, which is not uncommon, unfortunately. But Quincy Fire bought Bruce Ambulance, Quincy Police, all on hand, and again, DPW and the Parks Department, helping to set up and helping to bring down.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad it worked out. Again, and folks should look for some of the video and pictures here on QATV in the not too distant future. We'll have it on TV and on our website as well.
Yeah, and mark your calendars. It'll be around the same time next year on the third week of August on a Sunday, and it is probably going to be the largest single event of this type in the South Shore.
Yeah, 20,000 plus people, I understand. So that's pretty significant for sure.
You had a low water festival run by the Cambodian community. Draws probably, I won't say quite twice as much, but probably near twice as much as we do in
Wow.
Queens. It's a river event. If you ever get up to low, they only went one time. It's a bit of a challenge to get in. But it is a very remarkable and very large event. And we also have some other events in the city. We had in between band event that was going.
That's right.
So there was a lot of activities this past weekend, and it's not a bad day to spend August. And the attendance also kind of reflects how many people are traveling in August. It's always waned because of anyone's vacation or not vacation. Obviously, the COVID year was a little odd. The attendance was a little strange in terms of people just need to get out of like state in the month of August. So next big event coming up be Lunar New Year sometime in maybe February, and the routine goes back to the annual dinner in May. So. But for me, this is the kickoff of event season in Quincy. Chowder Fest will be the second Saturday in September. And unfortunately, I actually have to go to our celebration of life that day. One of my friends' mom passed. So I'm going to have to go out of I'm going to have to go to Worcester, actually, for that celebration and then make my way to Chowder Fest. So if you're wondering where I am on Chowder Fest, not being the beginning, that's where I am before I go to Chowder Fest and say hello.
Okay.
Um,
It's quite a stark difference between the two events.
People sometimes forget. I mean, I can't get to every event, but it isn't because I'm not someplace else doing something else too.
Right, right. But has been quiet in your other role as state rep.
It's been very quiet. I mean, as we talked about, we're informal sessions. There is going to be no major pieces of legislation moving. The committee staff, in my case, has been working to kind of prepare the fall schedule. We're going to have at least two public hearings, late September, early October. We're finalizing the dates, getting the hearing rooms, and we may have to do one in late November or maybe again in mid-January. We're also watching for ballot questions. I really don't care about ballot questions until they actually get the number of signatures. I don't care that they fired 42 ballot initiative requests until you get those signatures, and I really not interested in it. And how many actually hit my committee, I do not know yet until those signatures are gathered. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. We need to, we don't, well, need is a strong word, but I mean, the House Chair's preference is to try to move out some, again, we talk about a lot. In fact, I do a lot of technical bills, and I'd like to get another set of technical bills out of the executive session, this fall. You all know about the conflict between the two branches, leadership teams on personality, and has somewhat gummed up a little bit the co-chair's ability to move forward on getting bills out of executive session. I again like public executive sessions, contrary to what newspapers say. Last year, I'm the only chair. I promise you, the only chair with my co-chair Dan Sue Moran to have all our executive sessions virtual. visible. And you saw that on my Facebook live stream before they won't let me do Facebook live stream now. And we only did a small number by electronic polling through because there were home petitions that we had to rush out. But I still believe that you get paid to show up at minimum, and should at least show up, especially the convenience of virtual format. I find very little excuse for people membership not to be able to at least pop in and pop out, at least to get these executive session votes in.
Everybody has an electronic device of some sort today. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very flexible. As long as the executive session's open or during the process of a public hearing, we will confirm identity somehow and record the members' vote in the committee. This is very different from my early days in this gig, where there were only in-person executive sessions, whether people show up or not. Many things were done by voice vote back then.
Yeah.
Some along the way when email was created, particularly in the last decade, the desire to vote by email, particularly by Senate members, you got to show for work. I'm not being critical or I'm not beating them up, but
literally they were mailing it in. The old adage, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the expectation here, at least. And I know John Keenan shows up. I know Walter Timothy shows up. Walter shows up at everything, as we know. Those who know Walter Timothy, and with good attendance. My former co-chair Sue Moran, strong effort to make appearances, and as well as Senator Kennedy from Lowell. So, unfortunately, we have a lot of good attendance by senators. But all it takes is a couple of senators who are like, I don't want to show up. If we just do an email poll and itself becomes how much do you want to accommodate someone, or do you want to just say, you're not running this committee, I am, so you can decide if you want to actually cast your vote.
Right.
And again, this is the Senate chair's problem. The Senate chair has to work with Senate membership. I'm in charge of dealing with the House membership.
Right. Speaking of ballot questions, an update to the right to repair law that passed, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, the judge is still making this out. Judge Woodlock, I believe, is the judge at the federal level. We still haven't had a final ruling. Every time you follow this court drama, there's always a new crinkle that keeps making an appearance that causes more confusion. Technology-based stuff in courts are very difficult because you actually have to understand the tech to understand what you're trying to rule on, because there's really no precedent. For example, you can't apply a simple fishing rod patent the same way you apply a software patent. It's two different issues in terms of what it is versus the law itself. And if you understand the tech, the law becomes a little bit easier, but even then it's not that clear in the courts to understand. I have to be honest. I struggle still with tech stuff in the committee chair levels and trying to do things like data privacy for the third time in my life. And the technology changed really quickly in under 5 years again. So we're always trying to play catch up on tech education. So the National Highway Safety Transportation Board, whatever, NAHTA.
Administration, I think, yeah.
Administration, yeah. They've sent an updated letter, because initially they said that everything was preempted by federal law. They sent an update saying it's not preempted if it's a short-range device.
Yeah.
Translation, it doesn't cross state lines. It's not subject to Commerce Clause.
Oh, okay.
Now, the initial right to repair folks wanted to have your telemetrics wirelessly transmitted directly to a repair shop. This is the part they don't tell you about. So as you're driving your car, it will continuously stream information to the repair shops and back to your car. There's some instances they can't do that. So either they can fill your computer with advertising, potentially steal data from your car, or potentially, actually sabotage your car if some wrong virus or code gets inputted into your operating system by accident or by deliberate. And this is a legit security risk, not just for consumers, but also intellectual property and national security as well, because any bad thing can happen in a car. It causes chaos onto all of us. Mm. So it becomes a safety issue, highway safety issue, which is what the federal jurisdiction is. Now, the ruling they have is quote unquote shortwave devices, which most likely means Bluetooth. My understanding is that while cars do indeed have Bluetooth, your phone is hooked up to the car through Bluetooth. You could, in theory, expand the Bluetooth technology to include repair centers. So as opposed to having to flip open your hood and plug in the relative cables to your computer system, you could have a Bluetooth device compared to your car. and then you'll transmit the data via Bluetooth. The current statute for APR already allows for it because it does address future technology and diagnostics. You don't really need this ballot question because the current law gives equal access to all third parties of all diagnostic ability.
Oh,
So the Bluetooth sole purpose is just to transmit, similar to wire-based diagnostic tech and nothing else. The current law already covers it.
okay. So it's a redundant initiative, it sounds like.
Well, there's an alternative motive. I mean, this is why this is such a complicated issue. It was a ballot question by brand name, not a ballot question by substance. And again, the frustration always with ballot questions is that it requires the voters to actually read the entire law, understand what the law means and what its potential impacts, not just today, but also tomorrow, not on just for themselves, but also everyone that's around you. Ballot questions, people tend to think on their personally, they tend to think that because that's your instinct. They don't really think about the bigger picture. Legislators, the nature of our policymaking requires us to think not just about one person, we have to think about everyone.
Right, but this was approved by the Attorney General's office for constitutionality, at least.
Well, state constitutionality doesn't mean correct on the federal constitutionality.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's the crinkle. Ballot questions generally are a state constitutional issue, not a federal constitutional issue.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's why the feds told the state to ignore it.
Yeah, and then it also is the committee's purview to determine constitutionality as well. While I'm not a final court of opinion, I mean a court of jurisdiction, just a court of opinion, I suppose. I do kind of do my homework, folks, as you guys kind of hold over time here. And am I always right? Of course not. I'm always right because I'm going to get it wrong, but it isn't from the lack of trying to learn it. And sometimes the conclusion may be incorrect, or I get bad information, which also happens as well, but isn't from the lack of learning it. It takes a lot of time. A lot of time. So, we'll see how it plays out. Do I have to intervene on this issue because it's under my jurisdiction? I'm kind of waiting it out still because the federal court still has jurisdiction of the matter. Okay. And, I could, tweak the current ballot question law again. Well, actually not again. I haven't touched it yet. But, we're discussing whether we should touch it. And the answer was no, because it goes to the Fed. So again, it's not the correct word here. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, I always could just follow the federal recommendation and really just narrow it down. Again, the conflict I have is the fact that current statute already addresses the issue.
Okay. So in essence, it's already happening.
That's correct. If sometime down the road and, whenever, there's a wireless Bluetooth secure system of one-way transmission, or, regarding diagnostic data, all repair shops have to have access to the same thing as they currently do regarding a wired system connecting it to your computer in your car.
Okay, so yeah, so right now I can bring my car anywhere I want. If they have the capability, the machines that they have to pay for, right? They can plug in and get the data they need.
You're right. They have to pay for it. They pay for their own training, and no car manufacturer can deny any repair shop the ability to purchase or subscribe to the training services.
Okay. So we will. It's in limbo, we'll say.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Like I say, you can see the kind of quirky legal issues that I'm trying to navigate through this one. And, I've been on pins and needles for 8 years waiting for the Fed court to actually do something. So welcome to a part of my job that involves just kind of like waiting it out.
Waiting. Okay. One thing we don't have to wait for, in-state tuition and state financial aid for undocumented high school students.
Yeah, this has been a long conversation. I remind folks, I remember doing this back with Michael Morrissey. So that would have been back in like 4, 5, 6, in that time frame when it was initially submitted as a budget amendment and no one could figure out what it was trying to do. On the surface, it seemed to make some sense, but it got really weird. I remember Sal DeMacy put this thing down for a vote, and it was rejected by the members. It was almost intentional by Speaker DeMacy at the time. So this thing has been constantly being tweaked. It isn't the version you've seen, 15, 16 years ago. It's completely different from what it originally was. So it requires that if you're undocumented student, you have to complete 3 years of education in Massachusetts. You have to actually sign a affidavit stating that you are actively pursuing citizenship.
Okay.
It means your application has to be in, and you actually have to make progress on this. And then if you are satisfied the goals and demonstrate you're continually trying to achieve citizenship, you can qualify for in-state tuition as like every resident in Massachusetts to go to any of the UMass system schools. So, it does require a residency requirement, a minimum educational requirement, because you also need to get your high school degree. You just can't go 3 years here and not get your high school degree.
I see. Okay.
And you also need your active pursuance. And oddly, this actually knocks out some people when you think about it, because three years high school education minimum in a school in Massachusetts, you have to be here for 3 years. And some folks arrive and only do like junior and senior year. Some folks only get through the first 2 years and move out of state, or some other circumstances happen. If regular residents, I'm sorry, that's not the right word, residents in general that are not in a undocumented status, doesn't have those requirements. You could bounce around to 4 different schools. You can get your GED. You could leave. You could go to school in New Hampshire for 3 years and you finish your 4th year in Massachusetts, or you can be a Massachusetts resident in Massachusetts, but you go to a private school in New Hampshire. For example, you can qualify in-state tuition because you're a resident of Massachusetts. There is not these additional requirements to demonstrate that you actually were in a Massachusetts school completion. You've been in 3 different high schools out of state. As long as you had Massachusetts residency, you qualify for in-state tuition. It's a lot simpler, and I think people undervalue the difficulty barriers that have been created here for undocumented to access in-state tuition. There's going to be, unfortunately, we get emails about undocumented being unfairly treated coming to me once they try to utilize this, when they realize they can't meet all the check boxes. Same thing's already started with the undocumented driver's license issues. I began emails about the unfairness of requiring driving school, unfairness of the barriers that have been created regarding proper identification, meaning you need to show a valid passport or a consulate document confirming your identity. So I'm already getting some emails like, this is unfair to us. Surprising. It's kind of nature of my job.
Yeah. There's actually a small amount of students, according to the Mass Taxpayers Foundation. It would help about 350 students a year, so not a huge amount.
No, I mean, let's say we do have a lot of refugees coming in. You have a teenager refugee. Let's just create a hypothetical. The person has adequate English, comes in, discovers that he had a high school education prior to coming here that is not dissimilar to what we have here in Massachusetts. Be able to put him in right into junior year of high school because of the age, and seems to be able to meet all the prerequisites. That individual will be unable to receive in-state tuition if the person is undocumented. And you can have refugee situations where the individual is undocumented because they applied for asylum after they arrived in the U.S. undocumented. You still can apply for asylum. And it's up to the immigration courts to decide if you're qualified for asylum and you become a refugee. So it is a bit of a moving target. And I remind folks, I'll give you my favorite example is the Falun Gong folks from China. I mean, they're persecuted in China. A lot of them come to the U.S. They're not recognized as a persecuted religious group, but all of them apply for political asylum because they return to China. They will be jailed and potentially killed for practicing a belief system. So a lot of undocumented, they come here and, they apply for political asylum and hope that the judge considers that their belief system is sufficient to cause political persecution with imprisonment and potentially death.
That must be a fascinating part of the law to experience every day. That would be an interesting documentary, I think, to actually sit in on some of those hearings and hear these people's stories.
Absolutely. I mean, the immigration courts is still backlogged. During the Trump administration, the immigration courts were very understaffed. The Biden administration is still playing catch up. I expect if Biden gets a second term, I think this probably will continue. It's trying to beef up the court system as much as possible to try to do an expedited component. And also, I mean, there's also problems. For example, I've heard from folks that actually made it through the court system, were denied ability to stay in the U.S., but there was no recourse about what to next. They kind of left in limbo. And federal government doesn't provide you, if you've been denied the ability to stay in the U.S., what do you do next?
Right.
How do you go back to a potentially dangerous situation? Do you try to cross in the border of Canada? Do you go back to Mexico? Like, what do you do? And this was
Yeah.
actually a conversation I had with this person. They were like lost. They just kind of like walked out of the courthouse and like paid the lawyer, and it was kind of like,
Yeah.
now,
Yeah. Literally a person without a country.
yeah. And they almost hoped that there was a program to like at least get them to like somewhere, and move on to wherever they got to go next.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of failures in the system. I think people don't realize unless you have personal experience in the system. And you talk to some folks about what their experience was like, and it's rather jarring on the immigration level at how poor and inefficient they are regarding these reviews. And time is money. If you get an attorney, this is expensive, and then if you lose, what happens? And there's no real mechanism, as I talk to folks, like to do something about it. I mean, no one says, "Well, you got to leave. Go here."
Right. Right. It's just got to leave, period. Up to
You
you.
don't know. You don't know what to do next.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, of course, here in Massachusetts now we have two welcome centers for migrants, but is that a different person than the folks that are seeking refuge?
Yeah, the migrant center is a little bit. I mean, I like how we keep changing names of different things. Right now, we call them migrants. That's like a term that I've never used in my life until now.
Mm.
But these folks are basically subject to the federal government. The federal government decides where they go, and the state government, through the Office of Refugees and Immigrants, helps coordinate these issues. And the feds are trying to find temporary housing, and then try to figure what to do next all over the country. And as I remind folks, Quincy and Massachusetts has long been a refugee destination. Cambodians, Vietnamese, Haitians, Nepalese, Afghans, most recently Ukrainians.
Mhm.
So this is unusual. To have that? I mean, people who were up here in the '80s into early '90s. I mean, 40,000 Southeast Asians, showed up in a decade.
Well,
Right? I mean, the large Vietnamese population, predominantly refugees. The federal government decides where you get to go, and what happens next to you. And then, Cambodians also came in a ginormous wave back then. So this isn't new. People always act like it's new. It's not. If the issue here, and I agree with the mayor and the rest of the delegation, and even with the governor on this, it's just a lack of communication between the federal government and the rest of us. It isn't like we don't want to be helpful, but it's hard to be helpful. You don't know what's going on because we have to prepare for people that we want to be able to help. And the ENC engaged in a private contract. East Nazarene College had a private contract with the federal government regarding housing migrants temporarily. And we discussed before, these apartments have been there for like a long time. I mean, they've always had families come and go out of there. So, and now, that's true. I've talked to immigration refugee support agencies. There's a small number of ones designated by the federal government. And their number one challenge is housing and immediate transition into workforce. That's the desire. Find them some transitional situation, housing, and find workforce for them as quickly as possible. So jobs are good, as we know, but it also means you have to get a social security number. You have to be part of the IRS. It's a little bit different. You have to get a work permit. You have the immigration give you okay for a work permit. Through a social security system and so forth. So. They're not-for-profits who's in charge of doing that. We had talked to them about this when the Afghan situation came up last year, and they explained this is really complex and walked me through it, and it's not easy. But same time, though, like credit Bay State Community Services and Manatee Community Health Center and many other folks that were able to mobilize quickly, particularly in the health screening. I'm very concerned about health screenings because this is one of the highest tuberculosis rate cities in the state. We're a very high TB area. We all know about the measles situation. It's happened more than once here locally. So, I mean, vaccination regarding things that we don't vaccinate as much on the younger generation, is critically important. But also, it's a little confusing, like how long you're going to be here. My understanding is that it's transitional.
Right.
will be coming and going as they're processed, and some will stay here and some will not. It sounds like. So I'll be making a visit over to the Welcome Center at some point. It's been, even though it's August and I did get some time off, it has been still busy as I'm kind of juggling a lot of things at once.
Sure, sure. Can we talk a little bit, Jackie, about a new way that the state will be kind of taking the census of folks based on their ethnic backgrounds?
Yeah, this is the so-called data disaggregation issue, which we named data equity some years back, which is actually more accurate way of putting it. And those may remember those old Patriot Ledger articles, me facing down certain parts of the Chinese population regarding this issue and their opposition to this bill. And this is actually a national movement by nationally on state legislators, especially with the Asian American Pacific Island Caucus, who's leading a lot of these issues in many states. So the idea is that we're not a monolith where everybody is not the same. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. And that if we want to have our state services and better understanding of what we look like, the information we collect from the population has to reflect our understanding of it. So using Asian Americans as the example, about 1/3 of Asian Americans are Chinese. And Chinese tend to be better social mobility as a whole versus a group such as the Hmong in the Fitchburg Gardner area, where there's much smaller group. But because the Chinese does much better as a part of the Asian demographic, the issues of the Hmong community vanish because the data set doesn't reflect them specifically. But once
They just get lumped in with all the rest.
And they vanish.
I see.
They vanish. So this is happening in the Black African American community as well, where that it's not a what we call historical Black folks that lived here, African Americans that lived here multiple generations. You have this large immigrant community from places like we talk about Haiti, right? We also have African Hispanics from places like Dominican Republic, the people here from Nigeria, South Africa, and they're not all the same. They didn't come from the same socioeconomic backgrounds. They don't come from the same situations. And even on medical issues, because of different geographic areas they're from, they have different medical needs. So if the state is doing a survey of any form, we want this information disaggregated where people get the option of them to be able to fill out the form to reflect their ethnicity or multi-ethnicity, similar to the U.S. Census. And then we can collect that data and then get an idea what the reflection looks like for those human services or healthcare issues or workforce issues or safety issues and so forth and so forth. So we have a better reflection of what the state is. And it gives the future advocates and future academics the ability to conduct better studies about whether or not the state's doing a good job in providing services to the ones that actually need services.
Okay, I think it's a key point you mentioned. It's voluntary. It's not mandatory.
It is voluntary. We can't deny you services for non-participation. All the privacy laws regarding public records are in place. People don't realize public record laws is the privacy law for us individuals. So like your social security number is under the public records law, aka privacy as well. That's what public records are about, not just what you let into public, but also what you don't let into public.
Right, because that was one of the big concerns, right? Was privacy and being able to keep your information private.
Yeah, we reinforced that issue in the new law. We always believed it was already covered in the current law because the public records law is a blanket cover everything anyway. But we just reinforced that, and you make it clear the information can't be transmitted as individual data sets. You can't get Tacky Chan specifically what he's been doing. Whatever data set, well, let's say just healthcare, for example, regarding my individual healthcare data, regarding, let's say, mass health. Let's say get to age. If I ever make it to the age as a senior citizen that qualifies for mass health, which I often joke will question if I actually get that far, there may be some health data issues that you may want to know as mass health regarding different racial makeups.
Yep.
What the needs are. And you won't know Tacky Chan specific ones, but you may have a general Chinese understanding, and you can break it down by zip codes, for example.
Oh, okay.
So you could say, Chinese in Quincy that are surveyed, have this needs, and to compare it to, let's say, a Chinese population in Brookline.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
We can compare it to an Indian population in Lexington, for example. So, it gives a lot of ability for academics and also the government to try to figure out what works and what doesn't. And, you've heard my Meals on Wheels analogy where, our senior population, which back to this certified nursing assistant exams, are becoming largely immigrant groups that have little moderate English. And you should, provide culturally competent food to ensure that they actually eat their meals, because nutrition, is crucial. But if you serve foods that they're not going to eat, it's a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it has adverse effect health on our senior citizens. But you don't have demographic data what that senior population looks like. It's very hard for me to make an argument to any administration that need to change how to do things, much less any service agency. To change do things, and also hard for me to craft policy whether it be appropriate money in the budget or writing a new law, without this evidence. As I like to say, you can't rely on tacky stories to create public policy. I mean, I get by a bit on, life experience to try to help frame public policy arguments with the administration and my colleagues, but you can't rely on that in the long term. And I don't want to die in my seat. I'm hit that age now. It's kind of like I got to figure out where my next move in life is down the road. It won't be next term. Trust me, I'll be here for another term. But, sometimes I got to think about that too. And, and we'll always be here to help advocate for those causes. And hopefully future generations will.
I mean, you can't change something if you don't know about it.
That's correct. I mean, it's hard to operate in a vacuum. Actually, we did that through COVID, right? COVID was a classic example of government public policy all over the place because we're operating in a vacuum.
Well, they just threw money at everything and hoped that some of it stuck, basically.
Yeah, it was just insane. I mean, we're working in a vacuum of information without sufficient time, and in a crisis situation where we're seeing the real effects now, as opposed to, bite-sized effects. I mean, it was a global effect. So obviously, none of us want to live through that a second time. But that's a classic example of new information, must make decisions now, right, and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly.
But not easy to do in the legislature.
No, especially in such a short period of time. Sometimes we always talk about the economy, and I know Feds are going to be meeting soon this week. Actually, it'd be interesting to see what happens with interest rates.
Yeah, they're in Jackson Hole, I think, this week, and is that Colorado?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah, and
Wyoming. Excuse me, Wyoming.
Wyoming. Yeah, they're Wyoming, and they're there's no rate hike in August. There's a projection perhaps to do another quarter point September or October, or whether or not there's a third hike. The markets, if you look at the markets, and Joe tells you about the market every morning, it's all over the board. It's crazy. Everything's like everywhere at once, so to speak, and there's no consistency regarding investment. And you probably all see your 401k or 457s or 403bs or Roth IRAs. You probably all experience the same as I have. And the bond market's nutty because, you're getting, treasury bonds for 6 months at close to 5.5%. They exceed CDs. CDs are still floating, right at 5.25, but they're not keeping up with bonds. And bonds are, by the way, it's federal U.S. treasuries are state tax free, which also makes them more attractive. But even the long 10-year bond and the 2-year bonds, I mean, the inverse is to happen. Generally, you're supposed to have higher interest rate the longer you go, and lower interest rate the shorter you go. I'm sorry, other way around. You have a lower. Yeah, you want.
You got it right the first time, I think.
Yeah, the first time, right the first time. Yeah. So, right, it's still, almost between 0.8 and 1% differential between the 2-year and 10-year, which generally signals recession. But the consumer's still spending like crazy, but the consumer confidence level's down.
I know.
It's very crazy when consumer confidence is down, because I am the consumer protection chair. Generally, people don't spend money when the consumer confidence is down, but they're still spending money. And you got an impending strike with the car companies.
Yes,
which represents about 10%-ish, give or take, of the total U.S. workforce. Not just the car manufacturing themselves, but the secondary business impacts, meaning all the parts, the dealers, the repair shops, the gas stations. I mean, the electric charging people, all that is impacted by the car industry. The car industry shuts down. It has about 10%-ish impact in the total employment of the country. And that's causing fear and chaos. And the UPS guys, not surprised, had to give them what they wanted to the union, so they had to increase, which will increase your UPS prices. And of course, we still have that thing called the SAG-AFTRA writer strike,
Yep.
Which is going to cost probably California somewhere between $5 and $10 billion economic development if it goes into the fall. And as for movie theaters already badly impacted already, and streaming services are already badly impacted already. They're all bleeding money. Streaming services, if you're not Netflix, they're all bleeding money. And the theaters are in huge struggles still. So the writers and the SAG-AFTRA strike is going to have enormous economic impacts through the country. And that's just the big ones. So, people still paying for services, they're still eating in restaurants as far as I can tell. They're still going on travel, still going trips, doing long weekends to the Cape or wherever. But they're not buying big TVs. Delinquency on car loans have gone up, and they're going up quick. Student loan suspension of student loan repayment ends in October.
Right.
And the Biden administration we're going to be doing backflips to try to give people more time or do loan restructuring to help them so they don't go buried too deep into it. And people are still buying homes nationally at an interest rate of almost 7%.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It's wacky. It doesn't make any sense. I think people are incurring more credit card debt rather than just spending.
Yeah, I think it's closing in to about $1 trillion now of credit card debt nationwide. I think it's just about there. I'm not sure if it crossed it yet, but it was during after Christmas going into like May and June, it was steadfastly rising towards that $1 trillion total consumer credit card debt number.
Yep.
And that was clearly a bad indicator because it's a lagging effect. So a lot of stuff you see on interest rates lag. It's not like the interest rate up tomorrow morning and then you're going to go buy yourself a house. Pay raise, pay increases also going up, and actually that's now slowed down too a little bit where people aren't moving around on jobs, and layoffs still tend to be at a high end wage level. It isn't a Main Street layoffs yet, but the majority of layoffs tend to be in the higher income brackets. Tech company, financial services, and so forth, and that's going to continue, I think, as they kind of like condense. And there's a lot of concern about the banking industry, whether or not they can keep up with these high interest rates. So whatever Jerome Powell and the Fed board decides this weekend, and what they say is going to have a huge impact about the forecast of the economy. But the economy is very strong. Whether we can maintain the strength is a very good question, because at some point, student loan payments come up, credit card payments come up, house payment, car payment. Inflation on basic goods is coming down, but not coming down fast. Gas has gone back up again. Fuel prices, which means we have to get ready for those of you who have their electric bill contracts coming out. If you have a non-utility provider. And there's also, obviously utility is going to be going through the basic service process again soon, and put those bids out for electric prices this fall. And we have also natural disasters, right? I mean, there's a lot of heat throughout the country. We've had 2 tropical storms make through the West Coast. I'm sorry, one West Coast, one's going to hit Texas. And there's a potential, actually a tropical storm, but it may miss us up here in the Northeast. But then we have also 4 tornadoes last weekend.
Yes. Yeah.
Those also, small economic impacts locally and impact the revenue. So my projection is that next year state capital gains continues to be terrible. I think the income tax will be somewhat steady because people's wages have increased so much in the past year. They'll stabilize it. I think the meals tax will be good, but the sales tax won't be as good. And I think car excise tax is going to be challenged because people are probably not going to buy a lot of new cars, and things like alcohol and cigarette excise taxes will probably be stable. But I still think people also will play the lottery. The lottery had record sales again. And I don't see that not continuing to be a fairly stabilizing part of the state's revenue, even though the lottery numbers all go to cities and towns. I don't see a dime of that money that goes straight to cities and towns. So,
right.
There's a lot of moving parts, as you can hear. I'm kind of paying attention to, and again, it doesn't make any sense to me. Manufacturing production is down again. It was reported this morning. Housing purchases are up. Mortgage rates are the highest.
Yep.
Consumer confidence down, but spending is up.
Yeah, it's not following the standard format by any means.
No, and corporate debt is I wouldn't say it's going up, but they're trying to reevaluate your corporate debt. And also higher interest rates impact cities and towns and the state and federal government regarding bonds.
Right.
So they're paying a higher bond rate, which can have an impact on your city budget and your tax dollars being spent more efficiently. That goes to interest as opposed to being put directly into infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. Stay tuned, as they say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting what Jerome Powell says at Jackson Hole this weekend. Those short speeches is largely dissected to try to figure what he's saying or not saying, and what those impacts may be. It's like deciphering code.
We're at the end of our hour again, Tacky, so quickly.
Yeah, we are. It's good times move through quickly, and I hope you all enjoy the Tacky Talk-ish time. That takes about an hour or so. And God, I've been doing this a long time.
But we look none the worse for wear.
For those of you who are not on the podcast and watching on YouTube, I'll keep track of how old I look, it seems.
I'll do a time lapse video image of and show you from then to now.
Well, mostly it's weight gain, weight loss, and how much hair I have today. Or whether I actually comb my hair is the other mystery. So if you're listening here and you're like, what is he talking about? Well, go back 3 or 4 videos and you can see exactly the hair question. But we are still in office. I mean, the staff has doing rotating vacation. So obviously we did not empty out the office for vacation. The staff and us worked out, a reasonable way to keep the office staffed where people stay would have time off.
Sure.
Small office, we actually have to coordinate when you have a small office. So 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370, bang a digit on the phone if no one picks up right away. You have to wait a little while when you bang a number on the phone because Jerry Paracella controls the office and I'm the second name. I've already had calls about that. Tacky.chan at mahouse.gov, tackey.chan at mahouse.gov. I have a bit of a lull in email. I'm actually easier to find your emails right now. So I'm quite happy about that, believe it or not. State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook. You can see some pictures from the August Moon Festival of us, as well as at Tacky Chan Twitter. I get tagged on things. I don't get to choose what I get tagged on, so don't hold that against me. You got the malegislature.gov. If you want to find a bill, you don't need to call me. It's available on the internet, malegislature.gov. I was going to watch all past committee public hearings. They're all recorded and available on the internet as an archive. And of course, you got tackychan.org, which is our private sort of government website. I know it's weird, folks. I don't get to control my own website. That's controlled by the state. I have to make and pay for my own separate one, which we use as a resource page, mostly some useful phone numbers and another way for you to contact me as well.
All right. Good to talk to you, Tacky. I'm glad we're back at it. We'll catch up next week.
Yeah, we'll catch up next week and we can discuss life going into Labor Day.
That's right. It's here already. All right. Thanks again.
All right. Take care, Joe.